Hey guys. Tonight's story begins with a toad that didn't ask for your attention and definitely didn't ask for your tongue. One slip, one unlucky angle, and suddenly the sky is pulsing, the grass feels like pudding, and your thoughts are marching around in tiny hats. By the time you're whispering sonnets to a bucket and calling it Elspeth, you've already joined the exclusive club of peasants who got high by accident. But before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable. Let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. The toad doesn't look particularly magical. If anything, it looks annoyed. It's squat and damp and glaring at you like you owe it rent. You are, at this precise moment, holding a stick. A good one, crooked at the end, perfect for poking things you probably shouldn't. You had only meant to nudge the toad, maybe watch it hop. Maybe brag to Pip later that you'd communed with nature. But somehow, and the details are hazy even before things get strange, the stick slips, or you trip, or the wind intervenes. Whatever the cause, your face ends up far too close to the toad, your mouth slightly open, and your tongue making unfortunate contact with a patch of skin that tastes like sour rain and regret. For a moment, nothing happens. You blink. The toad blinks. Somewhere in the trees, a bird chirps with the smugness of someone who saw the whole thing. Then the world exhales, or inhales. It's hard to tell, and everything tilts slightly to the left. You sit back, or maybe fall backward, and the sky begins to pulse. Not rapidly, not violently, just enough to make you wonder if the clouds are breathing. You hear music. There's no source. It's like someone dropped a harp into your ears and forgot to tune it. Your fingers feel warm, your feet feel distant, and your thoughts are wearing tiny hats and walking in opposite directions. You stand up, which is ambitious. The grass beneath you feels like pudding, and your knees have declared independence. Still, you stagger forward with the conviction of a man who has absolutely no plan but is certain one will appear if he keeps moving. The trees are singing. You don't know the language, but it's catchy. You pass the village boundary marker, which appears to be weeping. You pat it gently. We've all got burdens, you tell it. It doesn't reply, but you feel understood. That's when you find the bucket. It's sitting beside the well, as buckets often are, but to you it appears radiant, golden, maybe, possibly glowing, definitely feminine. You fall in love instantly. Her name, you decide, is Elspeth. She's had a hard life. You can tell from her dents. But she's sturdy, resilient, practical. The kind of bucket you could build a life with. You kneel beside her and begin whispering sonnets. Something about her handle being forged by angels and the elegance of her curvature. A passing chicken slows its step and stares at you with what might be admiration or concern. It's hard to say. The healer finds you like that. Kneeling, sweaty, in love. She's seen worse. Last week, the butcher's son tried to marry a fence. She taps you on the shoulder with the end of her walking stick, and when you turn, your pupils are the size of dinner plates. You blink at her and say, "Madam, please, we're having a moment." You gesture to Elspeth. The bucket remains silent, but supportive. The healer sighs like a woman whose patience has gone missing for the 5th time this week. "Toad?" she asks. You nod solemnly. "Licked," you reply. "Deeply." She winces, grabs you by the ear, and drags you away with the force of someone who's done this before and will do it again. You protest the whole way, not because it hurts. You can't feel your ear, or your feet, or your guilt. You just don't want to leave Elspeth behind. You reach for her as she fades into the background, shimmering like a memory. "Wait for me," you whisper. "Don't let them fill you with common water." You wake up hours later in the healer's hut. There's a poultice on your forehead and something bitter on your tongue. You try to sit up, but your body still feels like it's been loosely reassembled with leftover string and moldy bread. The healer gives you a look that could sterilize soup. "No more licking things," she says. "Especially not toads." You nod, but there's mischief in your bones. She narrows her eyes. "Not even frogs pretending to be toads." A sheep wanders into the doorway, stares at you for an uncomfortable amount of time, and leaves. You're not sure if it was real. You decide it probably was. You whisper an apology, just in case. Later, when you're released back into the wild, your friends ask what happened. You try to explain the colors, the singing trees, the seductive dignity of Elspeth the bucket. Pip listens wide-eyed. "Was it worth it?" he asks. You look toward the well, where a very ordinary bucket sits unbothered by your return. You think about the music and the toad, and the way the clouds had sighed like tired old gods. Then you smile, slow and sly. "Yes," you say. "But next time, I'm bringing dinner first." The tavern smells like it always does. Old bread, spilled mead, and the kind of sweat that clings to wooden beams like a curse. You're wedged between a barrel that might be leaking and a man who definitely island. It's warm. It's loud. The air hums with the kind of cheer that only comes after 6 mugs and a mutual agreement not to talk about taxes until spring. Someone is singing a song about a duck and betrayal. You're not sure if it's a metaphor or an autobiography. Tonight's excitement is courtesy of Osric, who is not anyone's favorite uncle, but somehow everyone's. He's the type who shows up with stains on his tunic and stories too elaborate to be lies, which is precisely why they probably are. He arrives with a small keg balanced on his shoulder and a grin that should be licensed. "Experimental," he announces, like it's a gift, a threat, or both. "Brewed it meself. Aged 3 weeks in a barrel that once held pickled onions. Adds character. No one asks for details." You should. You really should. But you're already reaching for a mug as he pours the first round. The liquid is a suspicious shade of brown. Not rich brown. Not inviting brown. Just murky. Like a puddle with opinions. It fizzes once, then stops, like it changed its mind halfway through. You take a sip. It tastes like betrayal in ancient socks, like someone fermented a bad idea in a warm boot. You pause, blink, and then drink again, because something in your soul has decided this is either bravery or tradition. You finish the mug. You pretend to like it. Someone claps you on the back hard enough to rattle your ribs. You nod sagely, though you're already sweating through your elbows. The second mug goes down faster. Possibly because your taste buds have left the building. Possibly because Osric starts shouting that only cowards drink one. You are not a coward. You are many things. A bad dancer, a worse fisherman, once chased by a goose for reasons still unclear. But you are not that. You raise your third mug, like a knight raises a sword. You shout something incoherent. The room agrees with you anyway. Osric begins a toast about courage or cheese, maybe both, and you down the rest in 3 gulps that taste progressively more like danger. That's when time begins to hiccup. The walls breathe. The floor wobbles. Your teeth feel too large for your mouth, but somehow not large enough for your thoughts. You blink, and the fireplace is flirting with you. You blink again, and it's just a fireplace, but it knows what you saw. A man is playing a flute in the corner. You don't remember him being there. You don't remember flutes being allowed indoors. You wonder if this is how gods feel when they wake up confused in mortal bodies. You stagger to your feet with the confidence of someone who has never once succeeded at standing up. The tavern spins like it's trying to shake you off. You grab the nearest object for balance. It's a turnip, a large one, slightly soft, radiating nobility. You clutch it to your chest and bow. "Your Grace," you whisper, and then louder, "Milady Turnip has arrived." Someone cheers. Someone else falls off a stool. The turnip says nothing because she is a root vegetable, but you can feel her approval in your bones. You begin to dance. Not well. Not even in the realm of not badly. You sway like a flag in a confused breeze, cradling the turnip with reverence. A small circle forms around you. It is unclear whether you are being admired or contained. You don't care. The music is either very beautiful or a nearby cat caught in a jug, but you are moved. You dip the turnip. She doesn't resist. You twirl once, twice, knock over a bench, and keep spinning. Someone yells, "Encore!" Someone else cries, "It might be you." You try to speak but forget how vowels work. You wave your hand and announce that the kingdom shall henceforth be ruled by vegetables. The baker's son kneels before you and swears fealty to the crown of tubers. A goat wanders in through the back door. You salute it. The goat ignores you. Your fourth mug appears. You don't remember asking. You don't remember having hands. But there it is, sloshing gently like a storm in a bucket. You try to sip it and miss your mouth entirely. Most of it lands on your tunic. You call it baptism. The turnip remains dry. She is, after all, a lady. At some point, the tavern door swings open and lets in the cold night air and the village reeve, who takes one look at the chaos and closes the door again without a word. You take this as approval. Eventually, the floor comes to greet you. Not aggressively, just helpfully. You lie down on it with the slow-motion dignity of a fallen hero. Your turnip bride rests on your chest. You stroke her gently and whisper, "We were magnificent." Somewhere, Osric tries to light a candle with ale. Someone else is trying to play darts with spoons. The tavern, in its own way, is celebrating your legacy. You close your eyes. The world spins slower now, like it's tired too. You hear someone step over you. You hear someone else declare love to a chair. You feel the turnip slipping from your grasp, but you let her go. Royalty must move freely. You sleep like a man who has loved deeply and unwisely. The ale still bubbling in your veins, the turnip still reigning in your heart. You are not what one might call an intelligent man, not today. You've had some intelligent days. Once you fixed the thatch roof, using only elbow grease and 3 unfortunate ducks. But today you're staring at a circle of mushrooms like it's a dare, and you're 13 again, and nobody has told you no loud enough to stop you. Except they have. Repeatedly. Your mother told you not to. The healer told you not to. The priest gave a whole sermon about it once, gesturing vaguely at the forest and muttering something about temptation and last time. Even the sheep avoid it, which is saying something, as they have never once hesitated to walk directly into danger or manure. But the mushrooms are very round today, suspiciously symmetrical, slightly glowing, though you're trying to convince yourself it's just the angle of the sun and not eldritch energy. The air is still. Even the birds have stopped mid-chirp to stare. You take a step forward, then another, and then, boldly, stupidly, heroically, both feet land squarely in the center of the circle. You look around, and nothing happens, which is somehow worse. You wait for the sky to crack open or the ground to hum, or a squirrel to speak in tongues. Instead, everything just breathes. The grass sways, the mushrooms shimmer. You feel it before you hear it. The odd, ticklish sensation of being noticed. The grass is whispering, not rustling, not swaying, whispering. It doesn't have a mouth, and yet it is somehow very clearly saying your name and then reminding you about that time you stole a pie and blamed it on old Maud's goat. That was 10 years ago. The goat never forgave you. The grass hasn't either. It begins to list your misdeeds in order of emotional damage, and you try to argue with it. But your tongue is on holiday, and your legs are becoming decorative. You blink. The sky blinks back. The clouds have faces now. They are extremely disappointed in you. A nearby sheep trots up and gazes at you with the weary resignation of a retired professor forced to supervise a class of highly flammable toddlers. Then it speaks. In Latin. Not conversational Latin, but the kind used in religious documents and passive-aggressive stone carvings. You don't know Latin, but the tone is clear. It is judging you. It is disappointed. It is quoting ancient law and something about moral consequence. Then it bleats and walks away, its little tail twitching with righteous indignation. Your hands feel like mittens filled with bees. Your feet are either hovering an inch above the ground or have been swallowed by it. You're not sure which. Time does a loop-de-loop and then tries to crawl into your pocket. You tell it no, politely but firmly. It sulks off. The trees around the edge of the clearing begin to lean in slightly, like curious relatives. They smell like stories and warnings. You try to leave the circle, but your legs now speak only in riddles. In the distance, a bell rings, though you're not sure if it's real or just your brain trying to exit your skull. You try to wave. Your arms turn into smoke and then back into arms, but slightly shorter. You wave again just to make sure. The motion summons a frog with a crown. He tells you your kingdom is in peril. You ask which one. He burps and vanishes. You take this to mean both. You are suddenly very aware of how many teeth you have. Too many, not enough. Definitely in the wrong order. Your mouth tastes like secrets and soup. The grass begins to hum, then harmonize. You think you hear your aunt's voice telling you to put on clean socks and stop licking church walls. You nod solemnly. You have disappointed her yet again. You fall backward, or perhaps the world tilts forward. Either way, you are now horizontal. The sky spins. You see a goose wearing a tiny hat. It salutes you. You salute back. This feels polite. From the edge of the field, someone shouts your name. You think it might be Pip, or the Reeve, or Death, on an afternoon stroll. You raise a hand in greeting and promptly fall asleep, mid-wave, face first into the moss, which accepts you like an old friend and whispers lullabies about taxes and rain. When you wake, the sun is lower. The mushrooms are still there, but slightly less smug. The grass has stopped judging you, though it's clearly still thinking about it. You crawl out of the circle on your elbows like a man reborn through stupidity and soft plant trauma. Pip is waiting with a stick and a facial expression that suggests this is the 8th time this has happened, and he's made peace with that. Did you see the dancing goats? You ask. No, he says, helping you up. Shame, you mutter. They had good choreography. He doesn't ask. He never does. He just dusts off your shoulders and hands you half a potato. You eat it with the reverence of a man who has recently been scolded by a sheep in ecclesiastical Latin. As you limp home, you glance back once. The circle sits in the clearing, quiet, waiting, humming slightly to itself. You suspect it's still judging you. You also suspect you'll be back. You're not proud of this, but you are, unfortunately, you. Your aunt is not a witch. Not exactly, but only because the paperwork was lost in a fire and the village council has grown weary of arguing with her. She lives in the crooked cottage by the creek, the one that smells like lavender, onions, and vengeance. There are jars everywhere, on shelves, on tables, in places jars have no business being, each filled with mysterious items that look like they either grant eternal life or immediate diarrhea, possibly both. You have never seen her without her apron or without a sharp opinion, and both are usually stained. She invites you in without asking why you've come, which is concerning because you didn't tell her you were coming. You suspect she knows things before they happen, or maybe she simply assumes you're always about to do something foolish. Either way, the kettle is already on the fire, and she's humming a song that might be about bees or murder, depending on how you interpret the rhythm. You sit on the stool that wobbles the least and look around. A squirrel watches you from the rafters with too much intelligence in its eyes. There's a loaf of bread cooling by the window, and it smells like it knows secrets. You try not to make eye contact with anything pickled. She sets a steaming cup in front of you with the care of a priest presenting a relic. Bliss root infusion, she says, as if that explains anything. You glance down. The tea is a suspicious purple, like bruised optimism. It smells like herbs, citrus, and the kind of flower that might bite you back. Steam curls from it in whimsical shapes. Hearts, swirls. Something that briefly resembles a very rude gesture. You should ask questions. You should ask what's in it, where it came from, why it appears to be mildly glowing. But you are thirsty, and more importantly, you are foolish. You sip. It's warm and slightly sweet, but there's a tingle under the flavor, like your tongue has been invited to a party it wasn't dressed for. You feel it immediately. Your spine straightens against your will, your ears hum with distant chanting, and your knees feel like they've joined a union and are drafting demands. You take another sip because you're still thirsty and the betrayal hasn't fully landed. Halfway through the cup, the ceiling waves at you. Not metaphorically. The actual ceiling, with its cobwebs and hanging garlic, undulates like the surface of a pond in the breeze. You blink. It curtsies. The garlic nods solemnly. You decide not to finish the tea. Too late. Your aunt sits across from you, sipping her own cup with the serenity of a woman who once banished a demon using only sarcasm and a wooden spoon. It opens the spirit, she says. Sometimes sideways. You try to respond, but your mouth is filled with bees. Not literal bees, probably. You hum instead, and the table hums back. You reach for the quill beside the bread and begin to write a letter to God. You are not religious, but now seems like the time to start. The parchment ends up covered in frogs. Not drawings of frogs, mind you. Doodles of frogs. There's a difference. These frogs are expressive. Some are dancing. Some are weeping. One is playing a lute with great passion. You feel a deep connection to that one. You name him Gregory. You try to write a question. Something about existence or sin or the correct way to milk a goat, but your hand writes rhubarb 12 times and then draws a hat. You look up. Your aunt is now wearing spectacles made of crystal and judgment. She peers at your letter. Better than last time, she says. You open your mouth to ask what happened last time, but are interrupted by the squirrel leaping onto the table and giving a brief but powerful lecture on personal boundaries. You apologize. The squirrel bows. Your aunt gives it a walnut. It accepts with grace. The world begins to shimmer at the edges, like reality is a painting that got rained on. You are very aware of your breathing, which now sounds like wind through reeds. You try to stand, but the floor is a suggestion, not a guarantee. Your legs do their best. They compromise by folding. From your new position on the ground, you notice the floorboards are telling stories. Tiny carvings move as you watch. A fox chasing a sunbeam, a man being yelled at by bread, a bird laying eggs made of fire. You nod. These all make sense. You ask your aunt how long the tea lasts. She says, until it doesn't. You try to ask follow-up questions, but instead make the sound of a deflating accordion. She pats your head and hands you a potato. Anchor yourself, she says. You nod and hold the potato like it's a sacred relic. It pulses slightly. You name it Fiona. Eventually, the walls stop breathing. The ceiling resumes its previous indifference. The frogs on the page bow one last time and vanish. Your head is heavy, your soul is slightly wobbly, and your mouth tastes faintly of cinnamon and regret. You rise, slowly, reverently, like a man returning from war or a very intense nap. Your aunt gives you a jar of the tea for later, which you accept like it's a baby goat with a knife. She winks. You leave. Outside, the sun is too bright, the birds too philosophical. A passing crow caws in iambic pentameter. You walk home with Fiona the potato tucked under your arm, feeling like you've glimpsed something eternal and mildly illegal. You do not write to God again, but you do keep the frogs, just in case. You never meant to bathe in mead. That's not how your day begins. Your day begins with a simple, innocent lie told to the cooper's apprentice about needing to inspect the barrels for structural integrity, which is impressive, really, considering you've never inspected anything in your life unless you count squinting suspiciously at the moon after 3 ales. But the apprentice is young and gullible, and more concerned with chasing chickens than guarding fermenting beverages, so the door swings open, and in you go. The mead hall smells like heaven, if heaven were sticky. It's warm and golden and humming faintly, like the walls have secrets, and they're very sweet ones. The barrels line the room like soldiers in amber uniforms. You nod to them respectfully, as one does to sacred things. You tiptoe to the largest vat, a monstrous wooden beast that practically sweats honey wine, and remove the lid with the care of a man unqualified to do so. You lean over. Just a sip. Maybe 2. Maybe 5, depending on the size of the ladle and the depth of your shame. You don't bring a cup. You don't bring a plan. You do bring your mouth dangerously close to the edge, and that is where fate seizes you by the ankles. There's a slip, a wobble, a poorly timed hiccup from last night's turnip feast, and then you're falling. Not gracefully, not heroically. Just arms flailing, tunic flapping, mouth open, straight into the vat with a splash that would be impressive if not followed immediately by the sound of your head hitting something solid and fermented. For a moment, everything is golden, warm, floating. You are inside the sundae. You are the sundae. You are a golden god, marinating in joy. The mead cradles you like a drunk ant. You try to stand and succeed in vaguely gesturing toward vertical. Your legs are noodles. Your arms are interpretive dancers. You giggle. The vat echoes. It is, to be clear, not a quiet giggle. It is a statement, a declaration. I am risen, you shout, dripping in divinity and bees. Someone must hear the splash. There are shouts, footsteps. You ignore them. You are busy trying to compose a hymn in praise of fermentation. O nectar of the gods, you say, lifting a hand. O sticky elixir of enlightenment. You try to rhyme something with inebriation and end up muttering "Be Nation" with grave sincerity. A head appears above the vat. It's Marin the brewer, eyes wide, mouth open, holding a ladle like a weapon or a rosary. What in St. Buttercup's name? Shh, you say, pressing a wet finger to your lips. I'm in communion. You attempt to float in a meditative position. You mostly just rotate slowly, legs tangled in your own belt. Eyes half closed in ecstasy. She stares. Are you naked? No, you say, offended. Then you check. Mostly. More people arrive. There are gasps. Someone begins to chant. Possibly ironically. Possibly not. You raise a hand and shout something about the sacred buzzing of all things, which makes sense to you at the time. You explain, with great passion and several slurred metaphors, that you are now Brother Buzz, high priest of the hive mind, ambassador to the flowers, and the chosen of nectar. You're not sure where that came from, but it lands. A child claps. A monk crosses himself. Someone throws a flower crown into the vat. You wear it like a coronation. Eventually, they pull you out using a rope and a fair amount of salt. You are slick and gleaming, dripping gold onto the cobblestones like a mildly deranged demigod. The sun hits you just right, and for one glorious second, you are beautiful. Then you sneeze and fall over. They wrap you in a tablecloth. You don't protest. You are busy explaining that all life is simply bees moving from flower to flower, searching for sweetness and occasionally stinging politicians. You tell the butcher's wife she has a good aura. You tell the village elder he smells of lilacs and judgment. You lick your arm. Still mead, you say proudly. By the time the healer arrives, You've begun teaching the children how to do the sacred waggle dance of divine directions. It mostly involves spinning in circles and shouting cardinal points that may or may not exist. Northeastish, you cry, and fall into a hedge. A goose bites you, but you accept it as part of the cycle. The name sticks. Brother Buzz. You try to argue against it, but every time you open your mouth, someone offers you a spoonful of honey or asks for a blessing, and your resolve collapses like a damp scone. A month later, you are still being introduced at village gatherings with a reverent whisper. Someone carves a tiny bee into your doorstep. The blacksmith starts giving you discounts in honor of the pollen path. You're too embarrassed to ask what that means. You return to the mead hall once, under supervision. Marin eyes you with suspicion and keeps the lid firmly in place. You nod, humbled. You pat the vat with respect. Thank you for the awakening, you murmur. It burbles, or maybe that's your stomach. Either way, you bow, and from that day forward, every time you pass a hive, you give a solemn salute. You still don't remember most of what happened in the vat, but sometimes, when the wind is right and your head is fuzzy with sleep, you swear you hear tiny voices whispering in harmony, and for a moment, you remember the taste of transcendence. You find it behind the grain sacks, wrapped in a cloth that used to be white, but now resembles the general color and texture of swamp gilt. No one knows how long it's been there, possibly since the last harvest, possibly since the old baron ruled with an iron fist and a suspicious limp. But you are hungry, and hunger lowers your standards, along with your memory of basic logic. The cheese glows faintly in the dim light, not brightly, not helpfully, just enough to be unsettling. It doesn't pulse, exactly, but it suggests that it could. You unwrap it further, and the smell hits you with the enthusiasm of a drunk uncle at a wedding. Aggressive, uninvited, and weirdly emotional. It smells like courage and poor decisions. It smells like something that once had a name and possibly rights. But your stomach grumbles, and your brain, starved of nutrients and wisdom, says, "What's the worst that could happen?" You take a bite. The texture is complex. If rocks had feelings, if moss had opinions, it squishes and resists, and then melts all at once, like it's staging a dramatic exit from your mouth. You chew, you swallow, you wait, and then your fingers begin to dance. Not metaphorically. They snap, they twiddle, they do tiny pirouettes of jazz-inspired rebellion. You try to stop them, but your hands no longer answer to you. They've formed a union. They are expressing themselves now. You raise your right arm in protest and end up performing a flawless shoulder shimmy. You drop the cheese. It lands upright, which feels like a threat. Panic sets in. You rush to the door, but your feet are confused. They want to join in. They're tapping. They're swaying. You're walking like a man possessed by the spirit of rhythm and questionable dairy. A neighbor sees you and screams. You attempt to wave reassuringly, but your hand does spirit fingers directly at her face. She faints. You flee. Down the village path you go, hands flailing, hips uncooperative, muttering apologies through clenched teeth while your body stages a one-man cabaret. A child laughs and tries to copy you. His mother yanks him away like you're contagious. You probably are. The baker's boy throws a roll at you. You catch it mid-spin and bow, which only encourages him. Someone begins playing a lute. You don't know where it came from, but the music is there now, following you like guilt after a feast. By the time you reach the monastery, you're sweating profusely, and your fingers are attempting a tap routine that could summon minor weather phenomena. You bang on the door, not with your hands. They are too busy voguing. You kick it. A monk opens it, takes one look at you, and immediately throws holy water in your face. You cough and sputter. The water tastes like disappointment and dried sage. Possession, he says grimly. I've seen it before. Dancing devils, Jester demons. Once, a goat that played the tambourine. You try to explain, but your jaw locks into a grin that isn't yours. The monk drags you inside. They tie you to a chair. You would object, but the chair is spinning, and you're honestly curious how long you can hold the pose. The chanting begins. Incense burns. A bell rings ominously, though someone's clearly hitting it with a spoon. The monk waves a crucifix and yells something about spirits of funk and foulness. You nod. You've never felt so seen. Mid-exorcism, your arms perform the climax of a mime routine. The monk gasps. Another monk faints. A third monk draws a protective circle around himself and starts reciting psalms backward. You, meanwhile, are pretty sure your left foot just winked at someone. They demand to know the name of the demon inside you. You manage to gasp, cheese. This leads to confusion, then questions. Then, of course, the decision to return to the scene of the crime. You're escorted back to the storehouse, still twitching. The cheese is exactly where you left it, smug and glowing and utterly unrepentant. One monk tries to touch it with a stick. The stick bursts into flames. Another monk tries to chant at it. The cheese hums in response. You don't hear it with your ears. You feel it in your molars. They decide it must be sealed. A box is brought out. A scroll is read. A blessing is muttered with the urgency of a man who no longer trusts his own lunch. The cheese is wrapped in 3 layers of burlap, 2 layers of parchment, and 1 apology letter to God. It's placed in the box. The box is nailed shut, and the whole thing is buried behind the abbey under a stone, carved with the words, "Do not eat. Seriously." You are given a salve, a stern talking to, and a week's worth of bland gruel. Your hands eventually calm down. Your feet sulk. For 3 days, you smell faintly of garlic and jazz. And yet, sometimes, when the moon is high and the wind is low, your fingers twitch, just a little, just enough to remember. You don't usually follow chickens. It's not personal. It's just that most of them don't have anything interesting to say, and their conversational skills leave much to be desired. But this one is different. She stares at you across the village green with one eye, then the other, and there's something there. A glint, a knowing. You look around to see if anyone else is witnessing this silent exchange, but old Marjorie is asleep in her wheelbarrow again, and the blacksmith is too busy yelling at an anvil. The chicken clucks once, then turns, walks away. You follow. You don't know why. Perhaps you are bored. Perhaps you are sun-drunk. Perhaps deep inside you, something ancient stirs. A long-forgotten instinct that whispers, yes, this is the day you receive cosmic enlightenment from poultry. You keep a respectful 3 paces distance as she waddles through the village, her little feet pattering on dusty stone, her comb bobbing like a priest's hat caught in a breeze. She stops once to peck at something invisible, then looks back to make sure you're still there. You are. You are entirely hers now. She leads you past the mill, past the stream where teenagers throw pebbles and insults, past the fence that Gertrude the cow once kicked into the afterlife. She leads you into the woods. Not the bad woods. That's the other side of the river, full of owls that look like lawyers and trees that whisper about your tax evasion. But the acceptably mysterious woods, where people only occasionally disappear and return changed. You think about turning back when the light starts to shift. The sun dapples the ground like it's reconsidering its life choices. The air grows thick, not threatening, just charged, like the moment before a sneeze or after a confession. The chicken walks with certainty. You, less so. You swat a bug. The bug sues you, probably. Then you see the tree. It's not the biggest tree in the woods, not the oldest, but it has a presence, a stillness that demands attention. Its bark is twisted in ways bark shouldn't twist, and its roots seem to breathe. A faint hum comes from it. Not a wind hum, not a bee hum. A hum like monks meditating underwater while holding hands with secrets. The chicken walks up to it and lays one wing gently against the trunk. You do the same. Your fingers touch bark, but it feels like velvet and memory. A jolt runs up your arm. Not painful, just surprising, like being kissed on the forehead by someone you didn't know loved you. Your vision blurs. Not because of tears, though there are definitely some of those. The world tilts. The light fractures. Somewhere distant, a choir begins to sing. Not in Latin, not in words. It's a song made of colors and warm bread and the smell of your mother's hands when she braided your hair as a child. You hear it and fall to your knees because your legs forgot how to pretend. You press your forehead to the tree and feel it breathe back. You do not hallucinate. You ascend for a moment. One long, eternal blink. You are everything. You are the roots curled into the earth's secrets. You are the leaves learning how to dance. You are the space between stars and the laughter in the wind and the ache in a shepherd's knees. You understand death. You forgive your cousin for what he did to your socks. You feel every mistake you've ever made curl up and go to sleep like kittens. You come back gasping. The tree is silent. The hum gone. The choir distant, fading into the folds of your brain like a dream that doesn't want to be remembered. The chicken stands beside you, watching. You wipe your face. What was that? You ask, though you already know. Not in words, but in the aching hollow of your ribs. She clucks. Once. A deep, resonant cluck. You walk home slowly, like someone who's just witnessed the inside of a poem. The path seems longer now, or maybe you're shorter, or maybe the world is politely giving you time to process. The chicken follows you. She no longer walks in front. She walks beside. The village is exactly as you left it. Marjorie is still asleep, but now snoring with righteous authority. The blacksmith is still yelling, though now possibly at himself. No one notices your return except a dog who sniffs you and then backs away respectfully. You go home. You sit. You breathe. Later that evening, you try to describe it to your neighbor. You use words like light and song and tree, and he nods politely and asks if you've been hitting the herb ale again. You consider denying it. You consider smashing a pot over his head. You settle for a vague shrug and a mystical smile. He leaves you alone after that. The chicken stays. She follows you to the market. She sits on your lap during town meetings. She judges your decisions with a single eye, and occasionally a peck. She doesn't cluck much anymore. She doesn't need to. You both know what you saw. You begin carving things, trees, wings, strange symbols that make the priest frown and the children stare. You hum the song under your breath, though the tune changes every time. Sometimes people stop and listen. Sometimes they leave you gifts. An egg, a flower, a loaf of bread shaped like a question mark. One morning, you wake to find another chicken at your doorstep, then another, and another. By week's end, your yard is full of them. You are not alarmed. You are becoming. It starts, as most tragedies do, with ambition and a leak. You are making stew, which in your hands is less an act of culinary expertise and more of a bold experiment in edible probability. You have roots. You have water. You have a chicken that may or may not have died of natural causes. You need seasoning. You raid your aunt's cupboard, which is less of a cupboard and more of a chaotic shrine to dried foliage. Bundles of questionable herbs dangle from the ceiling like witches at a garden party. There are jars labeled in handwriting so old it stopped trying. You consider bitter snap, reject lamb's suspicion, and finally land on a jar simply marked. The smiley face is drawn with unsettling confidence. This seems like a good sign. You take a healthy pinch and toss it in the pot. The stew hisses like it knows something you don't. The bubbles seem to harmonize for a moment. You squint, probably just your imagination. You're very imaginative. It's part of your charm. Also, you're hungry. You stir. The smell hits you first. Sweet, sharp, and oddly like forgiveness. You taste a spoonful and immediately forget why you were upset with your neighbor over the cow fence. You taste another and remember that time you thought the moon looked at you kindly. You finish the bowl. You float 6 inches off the ground. At first, you don't notice. You just feel lighter, freer, like someone's removed the weights of adulthood, sin, and that one time you stepped on the priest's cloak during Mass. Then your stool tips over and you don't fall with it. You hover. You kick your legs experimentally. They kick back. This is fine, you think. Probably normal. Maybe it's the stew. Then the weasel arrives. You've seen this weasel before. It lives near the compost heap and once stole an entire egg right out of your hands while maintaining aggressive eye contact. But now it stands in the doorway of your cottage like a tax collector from another realm, staring at you with unblinking reverence. You would scream, but you're busy adjusting to your new aerial status and contemplating whether or not your ears have always been this loud. "Good weasel," you say cautiously. "Did you want stew?" It steps forward. You do not remember inviting it inside, but the rules of hospitality are murky, and you don't want to offend a possibly divine mustelid. You ladle it a bit of stew. It sniffs, sneezes, and then sits upright, like a tiny monk awaiting sermon. You float in a slow circle. You are explaining the nature of time now, or maybe regret, or perhaps you're just naming smells you've forgotten. The weasel nods. You begin to cry. The weasel places a paw on your foot, and you understand that forgiveness is not a destination, but a garden you water even when it doesn't rain. Then your walls begin to ripple. The ceiling folds like bread dough. Your spoons giggle in unison. The fire pit recites a limerick about a bishop and an eel. You decide not to dwell on that. Outside, the trees bend in approval. The sky winks. You feel very seen. The stew begins singing. It's a low hum, but melodic. You drift toward it, arms outstretched, ready to rejoin the root vegetable chorus. The weasel squeaks in warning. You nod in understanding. You are not ready yet. There is more to learn. You spend the next 20 minutes, or possibly 7 years, discussing mortality with the weasel. You find out it lost its brother to a hawk and still dreams about pine needles. You tell it about the time your cousin fell into the well and came out speaking only in riddles. The weasel understands. You are one now, bound by herb and accident and the fragile beauty of existing at all. At some point, your neighbor bursts in. You are still floating, hair glowing slightly, speaking fluent animal. Your neighbor, whose name you always forget, but whose potatoes you deeply admire, freezes. Behind her, a goose honks and leaves. Smart goose. "What?" she says. You consider explaining. You begin with the stew. You try to detail the taste of transcendence and the epiphany about worms being nature's librarians. You mention the weasel's grief, the rhythm of the curtains, the way your soul itches sometimes where love used to live. You try very hard to describe the sensation of hovering slightly above all your worst choices. She nods slowly, then sets down a basket of eggs and backs away. The weasel bows to her. She curtsies. It feels polite. Eventually, the herb wears off. Slowly, reluctantly, like a lover leaving your bed at dawn, brushing your hair back once before slipping into the quiet. You descend, not with a crash, but with the dignity of a cloud deciding to become rain. Your feet touch the ground. Your tears do too. The stew is cold now. The air is still. The weasel leaves, but you know it'll be back. You sit alone in your kitchen. Everything is the same, but it isn't. The walls remember. The floor hums faintly. You wipe your face, stand, and go outside. The trees bow as you pass. You don't know what herb it was. You don't go looking for the jar again. Some magic is a one-time invitation, and you already danced at that wedding. But you do leave a little saucer of stew by the compost heap, and every so often, you find it licked clean. The festival of smoke begins, as it always does, with a goat and a flute. The goat is not musical, but it does like to chew on sleeves, and the flute is mostly ornamental, since the only villager who could play it died choking on a turnip in '84. Still, tradition is tradition, and you do your part by waving a bundle of dried herbs in the general direction of the sacred bonfire and chanting something vaguely Latin that might actually be a bread recipe. The air is thick with potential and smoke. Mostly smoke. The elders toss in lavender, sage, and something called bless thistle, which no one can identify and might just be regular thistle with confidence. Children run in circles wearing crowns of twigs, and the village idiot is already shirtless, climbing the maypole and yelling about bees being the real landlords of the earth. The baker sets out flatbread. The priest has that look again, the one that says, "I will pretend this is symbolic if you don't set anyone on fire this time." You inhale deeply. It smells like peace and coughing. You exhale something that might be your last coherent thought for the next several hours. Then someone, no one's quite sure who, though you will all blame the blacksmith's nephew later, adds a new ingredient to the fire. It looks harmless. It might even be parsley. But the way it crumbles is suspicious, and the smell it releases is not so much herbal as it is cosmic. The smoke turns from gray to an iridescent swirl that tastes like secrets and clove. And then the bonfire hums, just once. A low note. But it vibrates through your teeth like an idea forming too quickly. The change is subtle at first. A few villagers blink rapidly and declare they've invented colors. One man begins applauding the Sunday. A girl sits down and gently weeps into a turnip. You begin to feel very aware of your knees and also everyone else's. You're not sure if you're standing or reclining dramatically. The air thickens. A duck waddles by and everyone bows. And then the cabbage patch becomes holy ground. It starts with Midroll, who is always the first to do anything dramatic. She walks into the patch with the purpose of someone on a pilgrimage and announces that the cabbages are speaking. No one argues, mostly because the cabbages are speaking, though their dialect is dense and you can only catch every third word. You lie down among them anyway, because it seems rude not to, and they smell faintly of wisdom and damp leaves. Half the village follows you. Farmer Tom is curled up beside a particularly gnarled cabbage, murmuring apologies for every meal he's ever had. Old Wilfred is trying to braid the leaves into a crown and insists that the cabbages have named him Leaf King. You nod solemnly. You are currently holding hands with a beetroot. The sky begins to shimmer, not visually. You feel it shimmer. The clouds develop personalities. One of them is extremely judgmental and shaped like your mother. The wind starts to carry messages. Most of them are recipes. One is a riddle about elbows. You don't solve it, but the attempt changes you. Someone proposes to a scarecrow. It's done with ceremony. A kneel in the soil, a ring of daisies, a heartfelt speech about loyalty and hay. The scarecrow remains silent but somehow radiates disapproval. The would-be suitor weeps, accepts the rejection with dignity, and immediately begins courting a wheelbarrow. Elsewhere, the cows begin to chant. It is not melodic, nor particularly meaningful, but it is in unison, and that gives it gravity. A visiting friar begins sketching it down as prophecy. The blacksmith attempts to wrestle a sheep for reasons he refuses to explain, then declares the sheep has bested him in combat and offers it his forge. The sheep declines. You watch all of this with the serenity of someone who no longer remembers what normal is supposed to feel like. You're pretty sure you are part vegetable now, possibly a parsnip. You roll over and consult a nearby snail on the matter. The snail advises patience and a deeper connection to slime. You take this to heart. The fire crackles once and belches out a ring of blue smoke. Everyone claps. It's beautiful, in the way things are beautiful when nothing makes sense, and everyone agrees that's fine. The The priest has given up entirely and is scribbling in a notebook with wide, frightened eyes. He mutters something about excommunication and cabbage heresy. No one listens. The cabbages are humming now, and their song is better. At some point, night falls, though it doesn't feel like time has passed. The stars come out, all winking too fast. One of them blinks in Morse code. You squint and swear at spelling "ask her about the spoons." You look around. There are no spoons. You feel a mild panic. Then you remember spoons are a metaphor. Probably. Eventually, the smoke begins to thin. One by one, villagers stagger out of the cabbage patch, blinking and reborn. Some cry, some laugh. One man insists he can no longer eat anything with leaves. The scarecrow has been left with a shawl and a poem written on bark. You kiss it goodbye. You return home barefoot and slightly more mysterious than before. The bonfire smolders. The goat is missing. So is half the bread. No one speaks of the festival for 3 days. When you finally do, it's in whispers, out of respect for the vegetables and the choices you all made. And for the rest of the year, you find strange herbs growing in odd places, behind your door, inside your pillow, in your soup, uninvited but somehow wise. You don't light them. Not yet, but you keep them, just in case the cabbages ever call you back. The bone woman lives on the edge of the village, in a house that looks like it was built by someone who misunderstood the concept of shelter and thought whispers was a viable building material. Her door is crooked, her chimney wheezes like a dying accordion, and her fence is made entirely of bones, mostly animal, though one suspiciously humanoid femur sticks out near the gate like a greeting finger. You've passed her cottage before, quickly, head down, pretending you didn't hear the singing or the slow, rhythmic scraping. Today, you stop. You tell yourself it's curiosity, or possibly research. You heard she helps people see things, though whether that means visions or nightmares or the color green from the inside, no one seems quite sure. You approach the door with the confident energy of someone who's made at least 3 worse decisions this month. She answers before you knock. Of course she does. She's older than the hills and younger than the moss. Her skin is the color of forgotten parchment, her eyes bright and pale like moons that have seen too much. She wears a shawl made of something that hisses softly and a necklace composed entirely of teeth, none of them matching. You want to ask questions, but your mouth has temporarily decided to become a museum. You've come, she says, as if this was a scheduled appointment. You nod. It feels safer than words. She leads you inside. Her home smells like burnt thyme and secrets. There are jars everywhere, some filled with herbs, some filled with fog, one that appears to contain a very small, very judgmental man. He glares at you. You wave. He does not wave back. The bone woman doesn't speak much as she prepares the tea. She hums a tune that makes your spine itch and adds pinches of things from jars labeled mirth, yesterday's echo, and one simply marked with a skull and a smiley face. The kettle screams. The cup she hands you is warm and trembling slightly, which is never a great sign from crockery. You sniff it. It smells like sin. Not the good kind, like stolen kisses behind the chapel, but the kind that involves running through a sacred field barefoot while covered in goat butter. It smells like old regret and spicy betrayal. It steams in pink spirals that seem to spell out words in a language you don't know but feel guilty about anyway. You drink it out of politeness. The first sip is fire. The second is ice. The third is revelation. You blink. The walls breathe. The floor gives an encouraging purr. You feel your tongue attempt to detach and go on a pilgrimage. You swallow hard and smile at the bone woman. She smiles back with all 37 of her teeth. 20 minutes later, you are seated cross-legged on her floor, passionately debating tax policy with your own shadow. Your shadow has strong opinions. It favors a progressive tithe system based on how many chickens one can juggle while blindfolded. You counter with a flat hay tax but make allowances for anyone who speaks fluent goose. The conversation grows heated. You call it a feudal puppet. It calls you emotionally dependent on bread. You both cry. The bone woman watches, sipping her tea and nodding approvingly. They don't usually argue, she murmurs. You must be interesting. Your hands are glowing faintly now. You can hear them humming green sleeves at different tempos. You try to focus, but the room is full of whispers that all sound like your old teacher asking if you finished your chores. You have not. You tell him to wait his turn. A spoon giggles. Your shadow accuses you of hoarding emotions. You accuse it of poor communication and inconsistent angles. You almost come to blows, but the bone woman claps once, and suddenly your shadow slinks back into its proper place, mumbling something about inflation and sighing dramatically. You breathe. Tea? She asks. No, you say, but your cup is full again. You glance into it and see your childhood, your possible futures, and an extremely unflattering image of yourself trying to dance. You drink anyway. It tastes like apologies and raw onions. You feel wiser, which is concerning. The bone woman begins tossing bones onto the floor. Chicken, lamb, maybe a raccoon. They rattle and clatter into shapes. She studies them like weather patterns. Her brow furrows. She gasps. She laughs once, sharply, then whispers to the bones and tucks them away. You ask what they said. They said you'll be late for something important, she says. But only once. You nod solemnly, though you have no idea what that means. Eventually, the tea begins to wear off. Or you think it does. Hard to say. The shadows look normal again, mostly. Your hands are no longer glowing, though they still occasionally wiggle on their own. The room settles. The small man in the jar yawns. You thank the bone woman. Don't thank me yet, she says. Wait until next week. You don't ask why. You don't want to know. You leave her cottage blinking in the light, the world looking both crisper and somehow blurrier than before. The grass greets you politely. The path back home bends in a way it didn't when you arrived. You step carefully. You feel taller, but not in height, in experience, in weird. Back in the village, your shadow behaves for the most part, though it now insists on being addressed by name. You choose Gregory. It approves, and sometimes, late at night, when the moon is fat and the wind is full of laughter that doesn't belong to anyone, you sip a mild tea and find yourself considering the ethics of goose-based trade systems. Gregory nods. You both understand. You were just trying to help. That's the worst part. No mischief, no trickery, no ill intent, just hunger and a vague sense of duty. The village feast was your turn this time, and you had one job: make soup. Not a complicated dish, not even a particularly good one, just soup. Hot, wet, vaguely edible. People don't expect much. They want to feel full, not inspired. You'd gathered onions, turnips, maybe a carrot if the gods were generous, and that should have been enough. But the pot looked sad, like it was boiling just to pass the time, not to feed anyone's soul. So you went out for herbs, a little garnish, something earthy, fragrant. Parsnips, you told yourself. That's what it needs. Good, hearty, rooty parsnips. And that's when you saw them. Growing just at the edge of the field, where the grass turns suspicious and the trees get whispery. Tall, vibrant, blooming like confidence. You didn't think twice. The leaves looked vaguely edible, the roots looked vaguely parsnipish, and the sun was in your eyes, and you were already picturing everyone patting you on the back and saying things like, "Well done." And who knew you had flavor instincts? You dig them up. You rinse them. You chop them. You throw them into the pot with the smug flair of someone who has absolutely no idea they've made a terrible, irreversible mistake. The soup smells floral. You convince yourself that's just a bonus. Complexity, layers, sophistication. You sprinkle a little salt, do a taste test, and feel your molars smile. It's fine. Everything is fine. You serve the soup. At first, it's quiet, normal, even. People sip and nod, because this is a culture where politeness is king and soup is never exciting enough to warrant commentary. You sit with the satisfaction of a job adequately done, already mentally composing your acceptance speech for best use of root vegetables. Then Pip starts laughing. It's not a big laugh, just a small, confused giggle. Then another. Then a full-blown cackle that echoes off the thatched roofs and startles a goose into flight. Others begin to notice. Murmurs. Shifts. Nervous glances. Someone drops a spoon and bursts into tears. Across the table, Old Bess gently sets down her bowl, closes her eyes, and slumps sideways into a blissful, snoring puddle. No one bothers to catch her. They're too busy watching Tom smear soot across his cheeks in swirling patterns and declare himself Lord of the Eternal now. The singing starts shortly after. It's coming from somewhere behind the bread cart. A soft, haunting melody with no words and no clear source. You stand up to investigate, but your knees suddenly feel opinionated and your vision has developed a subtle wobble. You blink, and the stars blink back. You sit down again. From there, things unravel with grace and drama. Rena climbs onto the table and begins to recite a love poem to the firewood stack. It ends with her kissing a log and whispering, "You always understood me." Several villagers begin painting their faces with ash, forming intricate, abstract patterns that probably mean something deep, but also might just be an attempt to look like owls. Someone suggests a group nap. Someone else proposes a revolution. A child begins gently gnawing on a candle. You stare into your empty bowl and wonder if this is what culinary success tastes like. You realize, slowly, and then all at once, that those were not parsnips. You go outside for air, but the air is full of murmurs and small, giggling breezes. The moon looks unusually smug. The trees lean in, interested. You press your palms to the ground in hopes it will steady you, but the ground is busy humming something in a minor key. You hum back. It feels polite. When you return to the feast, it is chaos wearing a garland. People are sprawled out on the grass, whispering secrets to the stars. Others are engaged in what appears to be synchronized interpretive dance with livestock. Tom is now fully painted in ash and perched on a barrel, declaring new tax laws. No one stops him. He seems happy. And then someone sings. A real song, not the vague tonal meandering from earlier. It's rich and low and filled with sorrow and joy in equal measure. Everyone stops. Even the fire leans in to listen. It fills the air like honey on a wound, and you feel tears slide down your cheeks before you realize they're there. No one knows who's singing. It doesn't matter. You close your eyes and let the sound carry you. For a moment, everything feels sacred and wild and true. The stars pulse in time with the melody. You forget your name, your hands, your soup. You are sound and silence and breath. Then the song ends. The fire sputters. Someone sneezes. A chicken squawks indignantly. Reality begins to reassemble itself out of broken laughter and grass stains. People stir, blinking, dazed. A few try to stand, fail, and decide crawling is fine. No one speaks of the soup. No one even mentions it. The next morning, the village looks mostly normal. A few extra piles of ash, some confused livestock. Someone's drawn a giant spiral in the dirt and labeled it the secret of time. You find your ladle embedded in a tree. No one remembers the song. They know someone sang, and it was beautiful. But the melody is gone, like a dream that left through the back door before you woke up. You try to recreate it. You hum. You scribble. Nothing feels right. The silence after is loud. You spend the day cleaning up. People smile at you, grateful but a little cautious. A few pat your shoulder, the way you might comfort a friend who accidentally summoned something. Tom bows solemnly and refers to you as herbal architect of the night. You accept this with a nod. It's better than soup criminal. Later, alone, You walk to the edge of the field. The poppies are still there, swaying gently, mocking you in the breeze. You kneel beside them, whisper a quiet apology, and promise to learn what parsnips actually look like. You do not touch them again, but you do keep wondering about that song. The monks make it sound so simple. Fast, pray, reflect. Go without bread for 3 days. Drink only water from the well. Chant until your voice turns into smoke. And then maybe, the heavens will open and show you something worth seeing. That's the official path. The clean one. The holy one. You nod along, pretending to take it seriously, but your stomach growls like a demon under the floorboards. Fasting sounds noble until your insides are begging for mercy, and you'd trade salvation itself for a hunk of stale rye. So you cheat. Of course you cheat. Because tucked away in your pouch is the mushroom, a small wrinkled thing you found in the forest. Not the usual kind either. The usual kind gets tossed in soup and makes everyone sleepy. No, this one had a glow about it, a whisper. It seemed to wink when you bent down to pick it up. The goats wouldn't go near it. That's how you knew it was special. You pop it into your mouth while no one's looking. It tastes like soil and guilt. You chew, you swallow, you wait. At first, nothing. You kneel on the cold stone, surrounded by monks humming their endless drone. You close your eyes. You're ready to fake enlightenment if necessary. But then your tongue feels too big for your mouth. Your hands don't know whose hands they are. Your stomach lurches once, twice, like a warning bell. And then the colors arrive. They come fast, dripping from the edges of the chapel ceiling, sliding down the walls, pooling in the corners. They curl into shapes, blooming, shifting, alive. The candles stretch, bend, explode into suns. Your heartbeat becomes a drum, echoing loud enough to shake the rafters. You sway. You try to steady yourself, but the floor has begun to ripple like a pond in a storm. Someone places a hand on your shoulder, and it feels like 1,000 birds flapping at once. You close your eyes again. That's when she appears. The Virgin Mary, in full radiant glory, hovering just above the altar. Her robes shimmer like dew on spider webs. Her eyes are deep and endless, and when she looks at you, your bones hum. You fall to your knees harder than intended, scraping skin, but it doesn't matter because she's here. She raises one graceful hand, and her voice pours into your head, not loud but absolute. "Don't eat mushrooms," she says. You nod furiously, tears streaming down your face. "Yes, of course. Never again," you whisper. You mean it. You'd carve it into your flesh if she asked. The monks chant on, oblivious. You are in the presence of divinity, and you've never felt so small, so unworthy, so terrified. And then you remember your stomach. It's been brewing something terrible for the last several minutes, and now it rises with the inevitability of the tide. You try to hold it back, because vomiting in front of the Virgin Mary feels like a direct ticket to damnation. But it's no use. Your body convulses. You spin sideways, mouth opening, and expel a torrent of mushroom-flavored regret, directly onto the bishop. He gasps. The monks gasp. The Virgin Mary sighs. The bishop, once resplendent in his ceremonial robes, is now drenched in bile and half-chewed fungus. He looks at you with the kind of horror usually reserved for plagues or unpaid tithes. His eyes bulge. His mouth trembles. For a moment, you think he might ascend directly out of outrage. Instead, he yells, loudly. His voice breaks the chant, shattering the moment like glass. The monks scatter. The Virgin Mary shakes her head sadly, mutters something about free will, and dissolves into the ceiling beams. You are left kneeling in your own disgrace, staring at the mess you've made. The bishop trembles, arms raised as if to curse you. You want to explain. You want to tell him it wasn't your fault, that the mushroom tricked you, that Mary herself gave you the warning, but all that comes out is a burp. They drag you out of the chapel. You hear snippets of words. Blasphemy, contamination, fool. Someone suggests burning the robes. Someone else suggests burning you. The bishop is still wailing about sacrilege of the digestive tract. You stumble, dizzy, clutching your stomach, still half inside the vision. The cobblestones breathe under your feet. The air tastes like copper and bells. They dump you outside, in the mud. The door slams shut. The world tilts, then steadies. You lie there, staring at the sky. It's full of eyes, blinking lazily. One of them winks at you. You don't trust it. You close your own eyes and groan. Hours pass, or minutes. Time has abandoned you. Eventually the nausea fades, leaving only a hollow ache and the distant echo of Mary's words. Don't eat mushrooms. You whisper it to yourself, over and over, like a prayer, like a curse. You swear off them forever. You mean it. Probably. By the time the monks let you back in, the bishop has changed into new robes and refuses to look at you. His sermon that day is about demons hiding in everyday temptations, about vigilance and restraint, about how not every vision is holy. His glare burns holes into your skull the entire time. You bow your head and nod, pretending you agree, pretending you didn't meet the Mother of God herself and make a fool of both of you in one afternoon. Later, when you're alone, you catch your reflection in a bucket of water. Your eyes are wide, too wide, still shimmering faintly with something not of this world. You lean closer. Your reflection whispers, "Parsnips next time." You smack the bucket over, shivering, and so your first vision quest ends not with glory, not with wisdom, but with vomit, shame, and a lifelong grudge from a bishop. You learn two things that day. 1. Fasting works better than cheating. 2. If you ever meet the Virgin Mary again, you owe her an apology. The herbalist's apprentice greets you with the sort of smile that suggests she has never once been cautious in her life. Her hair is a mess of braids that look like they've been tied by particularly ambitious crows, and her apron is stained with things you don't want to identify. She waves you inside with a flourish, her sleeves knocking over a jar of something purple that sizzles ominously as it hits the floor. She doesn't notice. You do, but you follow her anyway, because curiosity is stronger than survival instincts. The hut smells like smoke, honey, and damp earth. Bundles of dried leaves dangle overhead, jars of roots line the shelves, and somewhere in the corner something small and furry is snoring. She rummages through the clutter with the energy of someone who thinks mess equals genius, then emerges triumphant with a small wooden pipe and a pouch of shredded green leaves. Her eyes sparkle like she's about to show you the future, or at least an extremely bad idea. "It's just for calm," she says, packing the pipe with a little too much enthusiasm. Clears the mind, relaxes the spirit. Everyone does it. You are not sure everyone does it. You're fairly certain the priest doesn't, and if he did, you'd never hear the end of it. But the way she's looking at you, bouncing slightly on her heels, proud and expectant, makes it impossible to say no. You've already committed by walking through the door. You sigh, accept the pipe, and hold it like someone who's never trusted wood that's been set on fire. She lights it for you. The smoke curls up sweet and heavy, wrapping around your head like a damp blanket that smells faintly of pine and regret. You inhale. The room dissolves. Your lungs fill with clouds that stretch out into landscapes. The shelves melt into rivers. The fur in the corner begins singing. You close your eyes and the inside of your head becomes bigger than the sky. You stumble backward into yourself, trip over your own heartbeat, and then land face first in another century. You meet him there, your past life. You know it's him instantly, the way you know when bread has gone sour or when a goose has chosen you as its enemy. He looks like you, but with fewer teeth and more scars. He is also a peasant. He is also bad at decisions. You both take one long look at each other and agree silently. Yes, this tracks. He gestures for you to sit. You do, though the ground feels like a drum, and you're not entirely sure your legs are attached anymore. He tells you about his life. Or maybe you tell yourself, it's hard to separate. He herded goats. He stole apples. He once tried to impress a girl by balancing on a fence and ended up in the pigsty. He is proud of none of it, but he is resigned. You nod. You understand. You too have chased bad ideas into corners and pretended it was strategy. The conversation turns existential quickly. He admits he never figured anything out. Not the meaning of work, not the mysteries of the sky, not why stew always tastes faintly like feet. You confess the same. You are both dumbfounded by the fact that reincarnation has only made you equally mediocre in new centuries. You laugh, you cry, you slap your own knee, and he slaps it too. Because apparently your knees are communal property now. At some point, you try to ask if it gets better. If next time around, you'll be something wiser, something more. He shrugs. He thinks maybe you'll be a cow. You both agree that might actually be an improvement. Less pressure, more grass. The smoke shifts again. Faces appear in the haze. Other lives, maybe. A fisherman who drowned but swears he nearly caught something the size of a horse. A weaver who accidentally set her loom on fire and blamed it on elves. A baker who burned every loaf but became famous for inventing bread chips. All of them versions of you. All of them unimpressive. All of them painfully familiar. You don't mind. Not really. There's comfort in realizing you've always been a little lost, a little clumsy, a little too eager to impress chickens with your singing voice. You raise an imaginary cup to all your failures, past and future. They raise theirs back. The smoke swirls, applause echoes, and for a moment you feel like you've finally won something, though you're not sure what. The herbalist's apprentice shakes you awake. Your head is on her workbench, your hands sticky with something that wasn't sticky before. She looks at you with smug delight, clearly thrilled with her handiwork. Well, she asks, did it work? You try to explain you met your past life, that you both came to terms with the sheer mediocrity of your eternal existence, that you have accepted your destiny as a series of small mistakes and poorly cooked stews. What comes out instead is a loud hiccup and a sentence about goats being the real philosophers. She claps her hands, thrilled. You stagger outside, blinking in the daylight. The air feels too crisp, too loud. Your shadow waves at you mockingly. You wave back. Across the field, a chicken stares, and you know in your bones it has been watching you for centuries. You bow respectfully. It turns away, unimpressed. That night, you lie in bed, unable to sleep, replaying the conversation with your former self. You want to feel ashamed, but instead, you feel oddly calm. Maybe being ordinary isn't a curse. Maybe it's a tradition. Maybe the best you can do is keep stumbling forward, making bad choices, laughing about them with your future self one day. Still, you make a note. Never trust anything handed to you by someone whose apron is stained purple. The new deacon is young, eager, and very committed to proving he belongs here. He swings the censer like it's a weapon, wide arcs of smoke flooding the nave until the air is less breathable atmosphere and more fragrant fog bank. The bells jingle, the candles flicker, and the choir hums in a tone that feels like it's rearranging your bones. You kneel with the rest, head bowed, eyes watering, lungs filling with whatever blend of resins and dried mysteries he's decided to burn today. It's supposed to be holy. It's supposed to lift the spirit. Mostly, it lifts the inside of your skull out through your ears. The sermon drones on, slow as honey dripping down cold stone. You try to focus. Truly, you do. The bishop speaks of duty, faith, the importance of tithes, but his words elongate, echoing, bouncing like rubber against the walls of your mind. They turn into shapes, into colors, into symbols you're certain you'll never forget, but can't hold on to for more than a heartbeat. You shift uncomfortably. You close your eyes. And that's when the saints come to life. First, it's Saint Agnes, painted stiffly on the wall, who turns her head just slightly, the lamb in her arms winking at you with scandalous familiarity. Then Saint Christopher, stoic and strong, lowers his staff, points at you, and mouths something that looks suspiciously like, "Cheer up." You blink, rub your eyes, try to focus on the sermon, but the saints are restless now. Their halos spin like cartwheels. Their robes ripple as if caught in a wind you cannot feel. One of them stretches. Another yawns. The crucifix above the altar gives you a nod that feels weirdly casual. You're sweating, clutching the pew like it's the only solid object left in the world, when St. Lawrence leans down from his panel and whispers, "Want to hear a joke? You don't know the etiquette for this. Should you nod, pray, pretend you didn't hear?" But his expression is insistent, eyebrows raised in saintly mischief. Against your better judgment, you whisper back, "Yes." He grins. He tells it. It's not a complicated joke, nor even particularly clever. But the moment the punchline lands, your entire body convulses with laughter. Not a polite chuckle, not even a hearty guffaw. This is pure, uncut hilarity, bubbling up from your gut, ripping through your ribs, spilling out until the very rafters shake. You laugh so hard you fall sideways on the pew, knocking into the man beside you, who scowls, then inhales too much smoke and starts giggling himself. The sound spreads like fire on dry grass. Snorts, cackles, wheezing gasps. The whole congregation is collapsing into heaps of hysteria. The bishop does not look pleased. He clears his throat, tries to resume the sermon, but his voice cracks mid-sentence. Someone in the back howls at the sound. A woman shrieks with delight and fans herself dramatically. The incense only thickens, rising in coils, wrapping around everyone like invisible hands, shaking them silly. You're crying now, actual tears streaking your cheeks, the world swimming in a haze of joy and absurdity. You try to stop. You really do. But St. Lawrence winks again, and suddenly it's all over. You clutch your stomach, roll onto the floor, and surrender to it. 4 days. That's how long it lasts. Or at least how long people say you keep laughing. You lose track of time after the first night, when you collapse on your pallet, still convulsing, hiccuping between bouts of mirth. The laughter doesn't hurt, but it doesn't stop. You wake in the morning to the sound of your own chuckles. You eat bread while giggling. You drink ale while sputtering with mirth. The villagers gather outside your cottage to listen, half impressed, half worried, wholly entertained. On the second day, children begin asking you to bless their toys, claiming your laughter will keep away nightmares. You press a doll to your forehead and wheeze, and they cheer. A farmer brings you a chicken. You cackle at it until it lays an egg. Everyone claps. You feel like a prophet, though you're not sure of what. By the third day, your face aches, your throat is raw, and your stomach muscles scream, but still it pours out of you. You've begun seeing saints everywhere now, not just in church. They appear in the grain sacks, in puddles, in the knots of wood on your doorframe. They wink, they grin, they make faces at you when no one else is looking. Every time, you collapse into renewed hysterics. Your neighbor, bless her, leaves soup at your door. You laugh at the steam until it cools. The fourth day breaks something loose. You wake, exhausted, trembling, your laughter fading into a hoarse croak. The saints finally retreat, slipping back into their panels and carvings, their halos dimming, their faces stiff once more. You sit in silence, head pounding, throat dry, and realize it's over. You've laughed yourself hollow. You've laughed yourself clean. When you return to church the following week, the bishop glares at you from the pulpit. His sermon is sharper, quicker, his incense use noticeably restrained. The deacon avoids your eyes, embarrassed. The saints stare blankly from their painted prisons. None of them wink, but you swear, just for a moment, that St. Lawrence smirks as you kneel, You weren't supposed to be near the still. That was made very clear by the man who built it, who muttered something about sacred vapors and don't breathe near the barrel unless you want to hear the devil whistling in your teeth. But curiosity is stronger than warnings, and the smell of boiling turnip mash drifting across the yard is intoxicating in its own right. It's sweet and sour, heavy and strange, like stew that got ideas above its station. You hover too close. You watch the bubbling froth. You think, just a peek, and then the steam hits you in the face like a hot, invisible anvil. You cough. You sputter. You inhale again, deeper this time, because apparently your lungs believe in doubling down on bad decisions. The vapor pours into you, thick and cloying, seeping into the cracks of your thoughts until everything feels warm and damp. You stumble. The world tilts. Your body does not obey. And before you can stop yourself, you slip, tumble, and fall half into the vat. The liquid scalds your shins, the vapor invades your nose, and your brain begins to vibrate like a badly tuned lute string. Someone hauls you out before you drown, but by then it's too late. You've swallowed enough fermented turnip steam to pickle your very soul. You cough out a sound that doesn't belong to you, a deep rumble 2 octaves lower than your normal voice, like you've swallowed a bear and it's now paying rent in your chest. Everyone stares. You try to say, "I'm fine," but what comes out is, "It is AMFIIINE," in a tone so resonant that nearby chickens faint. Children scream. A pig flees. You clutch your throat, bewildered, and burp thunder. Somewhere, a window cracks. You stumble backward, voice booming accidentally at the sky, and the sky seems to listen. Then, it hits you. The revelation. You are not human anymore. The steam has changed you. You are wood now. You are bark. You are leaf. You are trunk and branch, rooted deep, stretching tall. You have become a tree. The idea consumes you with perfect, undeniable logic. Of course you are a tree. Your arms are branches. Your legs are roots. Your hair is moss. Your voice is the wind groaning through the canopy. You spread your arms wide and sway in the breeze that doesn't exist, moaning low and long like an oak dreaming. Villagers gather, muttering, unsure whether to laugh or call the priest. You ignore them. Trees don't care about onlookers. Trees stand, eternal, dignified, patient. But you are a lonely tree, freshly sprouted in a confusing world, and loneliness bites. You seek comfort. You turn. You find the cow. The cow, placid and uninterested, chews cud in the field, a creature perfectly at ease with its lot in life. You stagger toward it, your branches yearning. You embrace it with both arms, pressing your face against its warm, musky flank, sobbing with the gravity of a forest storm. "You are my brother," you bellow, voice booming low enough to rattle your own ribs. The cow shifts, unimpressed. You squeeze harder, certain this bovine soul understands. The cow farts. You take it as a blessing. Hours pass like centuries. You stand beside the cow, rooted and noble, whispering to it about seasons and sap, about rainfall and growth rings. Your words are deep groans and rumbling vowels, and though the cow doesn't respond, you sense agreement in its chewing. People walk by and shake their heads. A child tries to climb you. You scold him with a low roar that sends him running. You feel proud. You are protecting your branches. Night falls. The stars come out, glittering like insects caught in resin, and you extend your arms to them. They wink back. You feel their heat in your bark, your roots burrowing deeper into the soil you're not actually standing in. The cow finally lies down, and you crouch beside it, certain you're growing into the ground with each breath. You dream of forests older than mountains, of winds that speak in riddles, of birds building nests in your hair. When dawn arrives, you are still there, slumped against the cow, hoarse and shaking. Your voice has climbed halfway back to its normal octave, though it still carries a strange depth, like the echo of roots buried under stone. Your arms ache from hugging. Your legs are sore from standing. You peel yourself away from the cow, who looks at you once and then ambles off, indifferent to your sacred bond. The villagers whisper. Some say you went mad. Some say you were touched by the spirits of the forest. A few say you've simply proven that humans should never meddle with turnips. You ignore them all. You know the truth. You were a tree once, maybe for a night, maybe forever in your heart. And though you move again like a person, a small part of you remains rooted, humming low songs only trees know. Sometimes, when you pass the cow in the pasture, you bow solemnly. The cow doesn't bow back, but you understand. It's enough. The old widow sits outside her cottage the way she always does, hunched over on her stool with a shawl wrapped around her shoulders like a second skin. The pipe dangles from her lips, puffing out slow, deliberate clouds that curl into shapes you can never quite catch before they fade. Everyone in the village knows the pipe. Everyone in the village whispers about it. They say it came from far away, across seas or deserts, or maybe just from a stranger who traded it for a jar of honey and a favor. No one has ever smoked it but her, and she has never offered. Until today. She sees you passing and crooks a finger, the gesture sharp enough to cut the air. You pause, uncertain. Her gaze pins you like a bug on a needle. You shuffle closer, sit on the edge of her step, and she pushes the pipe toward you with a hand that trembles but never misses. One puff, she says. Her voice is dry stone dragged across wood. That's all you'll need. The pipe smells like dust and rain and something older than language. You put it to your lips, draw in smoke, and instantly regret being alive. It tastes like the inside of a tomb and the bottom of a stew pot, bitter and hot and endless. You cough once, but she claps a hand to your back, and the smoke forces its way down, threading through your veins, stitching itself into the seams of your bones. The world folds. The sun bends sideways, leaking light into rivers that trickle through the air. The grass beneath your feet hums in three-part harmony. The trees surrounding the widow's cottage lean closer, their leaves shivering like gossiping hens. You blink, and your eyelashes spark tiny embers that drift away, glowing for a heartbeat before vanishing. You're not sure if you're smaller now, or the world has grown larger, but everything watches you with the weight of knowing. The widow exhales, her smoke curling into words. Actual words. They drift out, slow and deliberate, and you hear them as clearly as if she'd whispered in your ear. The priest isn't holy, she says. The words hang in the air like laundry. He prays, yes, but not to the God he preaches. He keeps another name hidden in his mouth, one he never dares speak aloud. His prayers bend sideways, and that's why his blessings always taste of ash. You nod, though your head feels like it's no longer yours. It makes sense. It doesn't help, but it makes sense. She leans closer, her eyes reflecting fire that isn't there. Another puff, another curl of smoke. The mayor, she says, was not born the mayor's son. He was found in a basket on the river, carried from somewhere else. His real parents? No one knows. But he dreams at night of ships, sails, and storms. He dreams of drowning, and when he wakes, he counts the coins in his chest to make sure they're all still there. You stare at her. The smoke presses into your ears like wax, the truth seeping inside until it sits heavy in your chest. You don't know what to do with it. You don't know what you're supposed to do with any of it. The widow's smile is crooked, sharp. She leans in again, exhales, and the smoke this time forms a pair of shoes. Old, worn, familiar. Your great-grandfather's shoes, she says. The ones that went missing on the night of the harvest dance. They weren't stolen. They walked away. He had made them from the leather of a cow struck by lightning, and the shoes remembered the storm. They didn't want to be on his feet. They wanted the sky. So they left. They walked themselves into the hills, and on stormy nights, you can still hear them dancing. Your jaw drops. You try to laugh, but it comes out as a choke. Because in your heart, in the part of you that knows how the world really works, when it isn't pretending to be sensible, you believe her. You remember the stories of thunder rolling like hooves. You remember the old lullaby your grandmother sang about shoes tapping in the dark. The widow takes back the pipe, puffing calmly, as if she hasn't just torn open the fabric of your reality and stitched new patterns into the seams. You sit in silence, the smoke still burning in your chest, the world still shimmering with its bent light. She doesn't say more. She doesn't need to. The truths hang around you like cobwebs, sticking, clinging, impossible to brush away. Hours pass, or maybe minutes. You can't tell. Eventually, the smoke thins, the world straightens itself, the grass quiets, your heartbeat slows back into something human. The widow taps her pipe on the step, ashes falling like tiny secrets onto the dirt. You stand, legs trembling, head full of things you can't hold and can't forget. You open your mouth to thank her, but she waves you off. "Don't thank me," she mutters. "It's not kindness, it's duty. Truth rots if no one shares it." You stumble back toward the village, carrying her words like stones in your pockets. They weigh nothing. They weigh everything. The priest's crooked prayers, the mayor's unknown blood, your great-grandfather's storm-born shoes. None of it changes your hunger, your chores, your debts. But all of it matters in ways you don't yet understand. And that night, when thunder rumbles far in the hills, you swear you hear footsteps keeping time with the storm. You find the bottle in the cellar, tucked behind sacks of grain and a barrel that leaks like it's ashamed of itself. The glass is dusty, the cork swollen, the liquid inside dark as secrets. Someone carved the word wine into the side with a shaky hand, but the letters look older than your memory of the cellar itself. The smell is questionable, sour, sweet, a little bit like wet wool, and a little bit like something that's been fermenting since the dawn of sin. You should leave it alone. You should pour it into the dirt and pretend you never saw it. But there's a group watching you. Your friends, your rivals, your neighbors. Faces lit with torchlight, each daring you without words. The air is thick with bravado, and you're not about to back down. You raise the bottle. You declare it drinkable. You take a long swallow. It is not drinkable. It tastes like fire and moss had a baby, then abandoned it in vinegar. It tastes like rotten fruit, deciding to reinvent itself as philosophy. You cough, you gag, you swallow anyway because pride is louder than your stomach. The crowd erupts in cheers. You grin, foolish and defiant, bottle raised like a trophy. You drink again, and again, and again, until the world begins to tilt on its axis and you can't tell if the torchlight is flickering or the air itself is laughing. The last thing you remember is shouting a line of poetry you don't recall learning, something about stars weeping into a puddle of mud. Everyone claps. You bow. You fall. When you wake, it is dawn, and you are in the duck pond. The water is shallow, cold, and full of judgment. Ducks bob nearby, heads tilted, eyes sharp with disappointment. You are wearing a wreath of onions, braided around your head with uncanny care, as though crafted by hands both reverent and mocking. You don't remember making it. You don't remember consenting to it. You pluck an onion free, sniff it, and sigh. The ducks quack, low and disapproving. You feel the shame of 10 lifetimes. You try to speak, to explain, to assure them this wasn't your fault, but what comes out is a line of bad poetry about longing and turnips. The ducks turn their backs on you. One flaps its wings dramatically, as if to say, pathetic. You haul yourself out of the pond, mud sucking at your ankles, hair dripping, onions sliding down into the water like deserters abandoning a sinking ship. Your mouth tastes like regret and mold. Your stomach churns with secrets you're not ready to confess. You stagger toward the village, each step punctuated by geese cackling in the distance. On the way, fragments return, dancing, singing. You remember kissing a scarecrow's hand and calling it "my lady." You remember arguing with a fence post about mortality. You remember shouting a challenge to the moon and promising to wrestle it at dawn. The moon, wisely, did not show up. At the edge of the square, you find chalk scribbles on the wall. Your handwriting, sprawling and crooked. "All bread is a prayer," it reads, followed by something incomprehensible about onions being the eyes of God. A crowd is already gathered, pointing, laughing, muttering about prophets. Someone swears you glowed. Someone else swears you levitated. Someone swears you cried over a bucket and called it your brother. The priest avoids you entirely. The blacksmith offers you a jug of water and mutters, "Brave, but stupid." Children trail behind you, chanting, "Onion King, Onion King." You try to wave them off, but they only cheer louder. Back home, you collapse onto your pallet, exhausted. You swear off mulled wine forever. You swear never again to touch anything aging in a cellar unless you know who put it there. You swear to regain the respect of ducks, though you don't know how. But even as you close your eyes, the words echo. Not the bad poetry, not the drunken bravado, but something quieter, stranger. A whisper from the mold itself, slipping into your ear while the bottle tipped at your lips. Drink deep. Remember, we were alive once too. You shiver. You pull the blanket over your head. You pretend you didn't hear it. And yet, the next time you pass the cellar, you feel the weight of the dark bottles watching. You decide to fast because the monks make it sound noble. Purify the body, clear the mind, open the door to heaven. That's what they say, standing tall in their clean robes with their bellies suspiciously round for men who supposedly skip meals. You want to prove yourself strong, devoted, chosen, so you stop eating. 1 day, 2 days. By the third, your stomach is gnawing itself into poetry. By the fourth, you can hear bread loaves calling your name from the bakery windows. By the fifth, reality itself begins to warp, bending under the weight of your empty gut. You lie down in the dirt outside the fields, face pale, lips cracked, and whisper prayers half out of desperation and half out of habit. The sun blazes, the sky sways, and suddenly, a voice rises from beneath you. Low, earthy, resonant, you freeze. "Child," says the beat. You sit up too quickly and nearly faint, but there it is, sticking out of the soil. A bulbous red beet, its green leaves fluttering like a crown, its voice as deep as buried thunder. You blink. It blinks back. You wonder if you've finally gone mad. Then the beet clears its throat. "You seek wisdom," it says. "I can provide it." Your jaw drops. A root vegetable offering guidance. You want to laugh, but hunger has stripped you of humor. Instead, you nod, solemn, reverent. "Please," you whisper, "tell me." The beat hums. "All things rot," it intones. "And that is good. Rot feeds the soil feeds the seed becomes the root becomes the beet. Nothing is wasted. Remember this. Paka, ND, you are floored. This is wisdom carved from the belly of the earth itself. You murmur your thanks. Tears prick your eyes. You feel like you've been touched by divine truth. Then another voice interrupts, higher, sharper, dripping with resentment. "Don't listen to him," says the turnip. You glance over. Sure enough, a pale, knobbly turnip juts out of the ground nearby, glaring at you with small, judgmental eyes. "Beets think they're so profound," it sneers. "Rot this, soil that. Bah, life is misery. You grow, you get pulled, you get eaten, and people complain you taste bland. That's the truth. No redemption. Just chewing and spitting." The beet sighs. Ignore him. He's bitter. Bitter but honest. The turnip snaps. You clutch your stomach. You're dizzy, swaying, caught between despair and revelation, when a third voice rises, trembling and raw. I don't want to be eaten. It's the onion. Its papery skin shivers in the breeze, its layers quivering with vulnerability. Everyone peels me apart, it whispers. Layer after layer. They never stop. They never love me whole. They just cry and keep cutting. Your heart shatters. You crawl closer, cradle the onion gently, whisper comforts you don't believe. I see you, you say. I see your pain. The onion sobs, and its tears sting your eyes. Soon you're weeping too, the beet sighing sympathetically, the turnip muttering insults, the onion gasping between sobs. It's a chorus of emotions you didn't know vegetables could contain, and you are at the center, starving, trembling, profoundly moved. Hours pass, though maybe it's minutes or centuries. You lose track. The beet tells you to embrace cycles. The turnip warns you not to bother. The onion reminds you that everything hurts more than you think it should. You nod at all of them, feeling wiser and more ruined with each word. At one point you try to stand, to proclaim this new gospel to the village, but you collapse back into the dirt. The soil holds you like an old friend. The sun dips. The air cools. Your stomach growls loud enough to make the beet pause mid-sentence. You glance down, ashamed. The vegetables glance at each other knowingly. Eat us, the beet says gently. What? Eat us, the turnip snarls. Might as well. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. I don't want to go. The onion sobs. Your mouth waters. You're horrified at yourself, but your hunger is louder than philosophy. You pluck the beet from the earth, kiss its dusty skin, and devour it raw. Its sweetness fills you with strength and guilt in equal measure. You tear the turnip free, gnash it between your teeth, bitterness flooding your tongue like a curse. You grab the onion last, peel it with shaking hands, and chew through tears, its sobs merging with yours until you can't tell who is crying anymore. When it's done, you lie back, stomach fuller, heart emptier, mouth burning with the taste of dirt and sorrow. The voices are gone. The field is silent. Only the wind whispers through the leaves, and you can't tell if it's blessing you or damning you. The next morning, the monks find you sprawled in the field, face streaked with tears and lips stained red. They shake their heads, muttering about the dangers of fasting too long. They hand you bread and water, and you eat mechanically, grateful and ashamed. But deep inside, you still hear them. The beet's calm wisdom, the turnip's bitter truth, the onion's fragile longing. None of it helps. All of it matters. And for the rest of your life, you cannot eat soup without whispering an apology. Gertrude is not just any cow. She is large, solemn, her hide modeled like a map of continents no one has discovered yet. She chews slowly, thoughtfully, as though the cud in her mouth contains philosophies she has yet to finish parsing. Her eyes are pools of deep brown patience, and you often wonder if she knows more than the priest, more than the mayor, more than all of you combined. Most days, she ignores you, content to stand in her field and exude majesty. Today, she decides to breathe on you. It happens when you lean in too close, curious about whether her ears are really as soft as rumors claim. She exhales, long and steady, a fog of heat that rolls over your face like the sigh of an ancient god. It smells of hay, milk, and something else. Something heavier, stranger, like the damp underside of creation itself. You inhale before you can stop yourself. The world folds inward. The sky is no longer blue but endless velvet, studded with stars that pulse in strange rhythm. They flicker, bright and dim, bright and dim, and you realize they are spelling something. Morse code, though you don't know how you know the name for it. You stare, jaw slack, as entire constellations blink in messages meant for you alone. You do not understand a single word. Still, you nod solemnly, pretending comprehension, because the universe has chosen you as its audience, and you do not wish to seem rude. You raise a hand in acknowledgement, the way you'd greet a neighbor across the lane. The stars pause, as though waiting for your reply. You offer them the only thing you can, a thumbs up. They blink faster, almost frantic. You panic. You shout, "Yes, absolutely." Though to what, you cannot say. The stars dim again, clearly unimpressed. Gertrude chews. You look at her, desperate. "What does it mean?" you beg. Her tail swishes. She exhales again, softer this time, and you glimpse more than stars. You see the bones of the earth, glowing like veins beneath the soil. You see rivers as silver ribbons curling endlessly. You see the wind not as air but as braided threads, weaving in and out of every living thing. You see yourself as a tiny figure in a tapestry so vast it stretches beyond comprehension, your thread thin and unsteady, but there, nonetheless. It is terrifying. It is beautiful. It is too much. You collapse into the grass, clutching your chest, gasping as though the weight of knowing is crushing your ribs. The ground hums beneath you, deep and resonant, like the base of creation itself. You swear the soil pulses with your heartbeat. Then the visions splinter. You are no longer in the field, but floating in darkness, surrounded by stars blinking their incomprehensible code. Shapes move between them. Vast, strange, older than language. One leans close, its outline cow-like, its eyes galaxies, its breath the same sweet rot you tasted before. "Moo," it says, and the sound cracks open your skull with its profundity. You weep. You don't know why. You just know you have witnessed the core of existence, and it sounds exactly like a cow. When you blink again, you are back in the field, face wet with tears and snot, staring up at Gertrude, who is still chewing, still gazing at you with that same patient calm. You clutch at her leg like a drowning man. "Thank you," you whisper hoarsely. "Thank you for showing me." She shifts slightly, swats a fly with her tail, and goes back to chewing. The village finds you hours later, sprawled in the grass, babbling about blinking stars and the cow that holds the key to the universe. Most laugh. A few nod knowingly. Old Willem mutters that he's always suspected Gertrude of higher wisdom. The priest frowns deeply and mutters about idolatry. That night, you lie awake, staring at the sky, waiting for the stars to blink again. They do, faintly, but without Gertrude's breath guiding you, you can't read them. They remain silent lights, unyielding and cold. You press your hands together, not in prayer, but in imitation of hooves, and whisper, "Moo." It feels like the right thing to say. You only went because they promised free bread. Not even good bread. Yesterday's loaves, tough at the edges, the sort you have to gnaw like a dog with a bone. But hunger persuades, and when they beckon you into the barn at the edge of the village, you follow. Inside, the air is thick with candle smoke and the smell of beeswax melting onto straw. People in matching brown robes stand in a circle, humming in unison, their voices low and steady, like a swarm of bees trying to sound dignified. They call themselves a harmony circle. That sounds harmless enough. You nod along, telling yourself you'll sit quietly, eat your stale bread, and leave. But before you can sneak toward the food table, someone presses a robe into your arms. It's scratchy, smells faintly of goat, and has a suspicious stain down one side. You hesitate, but the group watches with wide, earnest eyes. You sigh, slip it over your shoulders, and suddenly you're no longer a guest. You're a participant. The humming grows louder. The circle tightens. Candles drip wax into the dirt, forming strange, accidental patterns that might be holy or might just be clumsy. You shuffle your feet to keep pace as the group begins swaying, their voices rising in nonsense syllables that somehow feel important. You don't know the words, so you mumble, hoping no one notices. But they do. A hand squeezes your arm. "Good," someone whispers. "Very good." The chanting deepens. The air thickens. Your head grows light. You try to tell yourself this is just hunger, just smoke, just a barn full of lunatics in robes. But then you blink, and the candle flames stretch taller, twisting into shapes, faces, animals, fleeting visions of things you've never seen. You sway harder, convinced the ground is moving beneath you, that the circle is spinning without anyone walking. Your stomach growls in protest, but your mouth keeps humming, the nonsense spilling out like you've known it all along. At some point they ask your name. You give it. They shake their heads. That isn't your name anymore. They lean close, voices dripping with certainty, and declare your true name has been revealed. Wiggledrum. They all say it in unison. You laugh, waiting for the joke to land, but no one laughs with you. They nod solemnly, repeating it again and again, until the barn itself seems to echo. You are Wiggledrum now. The ceremony continues. Wax coats your fingertips as they press candles into your hands, dripping onto your skin, hardening like new armor. You want to complain about the pain, but everyone else holds their candles proudly, so you grit your teeth. Someone begins speaking in riddles. Something about rivers flowing uphill and the sky being jealous of dirt. You nod wisely, though you understand none of it. Another member begins hopping in place, and the rest follow suit, so you hop too, nearly tripping over your robe. The group cheers, as though you've unlocked a hidden truth with your clumsy leaps. By the time the chanting fades, you are exhausted, sweaty, and more confused than when you entered. They gather around you, smiling beatifically, calling you Brother Wiggledrum. You want to protest, to insist this was all a misunderstanding, that you only came for bread. But their faces glow with such certainty, such joy, that the words stick in your throat. They hug you, one by one, robes brushing, wax cracking, voices whispering blessings you cannot decipher. When you finally stumble out into the night air, the stars feel too close, like they're leaning down to eavesdrop on your new name, Wiggledrum. The sound rattles in your skull. You shake your head. Tell yourself you'll forget it by morning. You do not forget. The next day, villagers greet you as usual, but the members of the Harmony Circle pass by, bowing slightly, murmuring, Brother Wiggledrum under their breath. You flush. You laugh nervously, but they are serious. The children begin chanting it in the street, mocking you, turning the solemn into the ridiculous. You chase them off, but the name sticks like burrs. Even the innkeeper uses it when you ask for ale. At night, you dream of candles bending into rivers, of voices humming in rhythms that twist your bones. You wake with wax still clinging to your fingertips, though you're certain you washed it away. You swear you can hear faint chanting in the distance, even when the village is asleep. Weeks later, you spot another newcomer wearing a robe, shuffling nervously into the barn. You want to warn them, to whisper, leave before they name you, but instead you smile, clap them on the shoulder, and mutter, welcome. You realize too late that you've stopped resisting. You've begun to hum again, the nonsense syllables rolling off your tongue with ease. You are Wiggledrum, whether you like it or not. And strangely, it doesn't feel so strange anymore. The festival comes every year, loud and chaotic, but the cloudberry mead is the true centerpiece. It ferments in a barrel sealed with wax and guarded like a relic, watched by 3 grandmothers who glare at anyone who so much as breathes near it before the right day. When the cask is finally opened, the air fills with a scent that is sharp and sweet, like honey left out in the rain, like fruit that dreamed too long of becoming lightning. Cups are passed, cheers rise, and you drink. It is smoother than ale, sharper than wine, golden enough to make the torchlight seem pale beside it. 1 sip warms your chest. 2 sips brighten the world, sharpening edges you never noticed before. 3 sips, and suddenly, the cobblestones are humming beneath your feet, muttering quiet songs only you can hear. You raise your cup higher, convinced that nothing in existence has ever tasted so purely of truth. The shepherd sits across from you, his cup already half empty, his eyes glazed in a way that suggests he sees beyond the village square. He leans forward, gripping your arm with startling intensity. "Tell me," he says, "do rocks have opinions?" You laugh, at first. But his gaze is steady, demanding, the mead burning through your veins like a challenge. You hesitate. You try to dismiss it, but the question gnaws at you. Do they? You look down at the stones underfoot, uneven, worn, holding centuries of footsteps. They feel older than your imagination, older than the priest's sermons, older than God himself. Surely they must think something. Yes, you whisper, throat thick. They must. The shepherd slams his hand on the table, triumphant. "Exactly," he bellows. "I've said it for years, but no one listens. Rocks know. They remember. The mead loosens your tongue. But what do they think about?" You demand. His eyes narrow. "Us. They think about us. Every step we take, every word we say. They have judgments. They have preferences. Some like the weight of sheep. Some hate the sound of clogs." You stagger back, struck dumb by the enormity of it. All your life, you've walked over stones, sat on them, stacked them into walls without ever once considering their opinions. The guilt surges. Your chest tightens. You fall to your knees and press your hands against the ground. "I'm sorry," you sob. "I didn't know. I should have asked." The villagers watch with bemusement, but the shepherd kneels beside you, pressing his forehead to the stones. "Forgive us," he murmurs. "We were foolish children." The cobblestones hum louder. You swear you feel them vibrating beneath your palms, a rhythm like a heartbeat, steady and slow. In that moment, you are certain the rocks have heard you, and more than that, they have granted you mercy. Tears spill down your face, hot and unashamed. You babble apologies. You promise to listen. You promise never again to ignore the wisdom beneath your feet. The shepherd cries with you, the two of you clutching each other, united in your revelation. The villagers shake their heads, muttering about too much mead. But you know the truth. The rocks approve. Later, when the festival dwindles and most stagger home, you remain seated on the ground, listening. The stones speak in vibrations only your mead-soaked bones can hear. They don't say much, mostly complaints about being cold or heavy or bored. But their presence comforts you. You answer each one, nodding solemnly, as though holding counsel with a parliament of the earth itself. When dawn comes, the square is littered with crumbs, broken cups, and sleeping bodies. You rise unsteadily, pressing your hand once more to the stones in farewell. "Thank you," you whisper. "I'll remember." The stones, dignified as ever, do not reply. But you swear the ground feels a little softer under your feet, as though they've decided to be kind. And every time you pass the square afterward, you nod to the cobblestones. Some days, you think you hear them nod back. You find the log by the riverbank, half buried in mud, its bark soft with age and its center hollowed by time. It looks ordinary at first. Just another fallen tree, forgotten by forest and man alike. But when you sit beside it, when you press your hand against its rough surface, you feel something stir. A weight, a presence, as though the log has been waiting for you. You are tired, your stomach unsettled from too much bad ale, your thoughts buzzing like hornets in a jar. You sigh, lean against the log, and without meaning to, you start speaking. At first, it's nothing important. Complaints about chores, grumbles about neighbors, mutterings about how unfair life is when bread goes stale too quickly. The log is silent, steady, unmoved. That silence pulls more words from you. Soon you are confessing secrets you have never dared say aloud. The log listens. It does not nod. It does not frown. It does not cut you off mid-sentence to tell you about its own troubles. It simply rests beneath your hand, the grooves in its bark catching your palm, as though holding you in return. You begin to feel lighter, your words spilling like water into soil, absorbed and understood without judgment. Hours pass. The sun shifts. You are still talking. You tell the log about the time you tripped carrying a basket and blamed the cat. You tell it about the ache in your chest when you watch couples dance at festivals, the longing you never name. You tell it about the dreams you've had where you fly, where your arms are wings and your shadow is a bird. You tell it about the mushroom circle you once stepped into, the beat that once spoke to you, the cow who breathed the universe into your lungs. The log creaks softly, settling in the mud. You take this as a response. By evening, villagers pass by and stare. You don't notice. You're too busy explaining your theories about why stars blink or how ducks probably keep secrets they'll never share. You laugh, you cry, you whisper. The log is patient. You feel seen in a way you never thought possible. Night falls, the moon rises. You are still there. Your voice grows hoarse, but you keep speaking. The log glimmers faintly in the moonlight, and for one delirious moment, you are certain its bark rearranges into a smile. You tell it about your fears of death, about how you hope the afterlife smells like bread and honey, about how you want someone to remember you, even if only as the fool who once talked to a log for a whole day. You fall asleep leaning against it, cheek pressed to its splintering side. Your dreams are filled with forests, walking, roots whispering, branches stretching down to stroke your face. You wake at dawn with bark imprinted into your skin, your arms scratched, your hands covered in tiny splinters that sting when you move. But you feel different, changed, as though you've been emptied out and filled again with something steadier, something rooted. The villagers laugh when you tell them. They call you mad, tell you it was just a log, just rotting wood by the river. They do not understand. They did not hear the silence, heavy and kind, that held your words like a promise. You don't argue. You simply nod, rub your sore hands, and glance back at the riverbank, where the log rests, as though nothing happened. But you know you left a piece of yourself in its hollow heart, and you know it gave you something in return. Wisdom, maybe. Bark, definitely. You wake up one morning and decide enough is enough. No more toads, no more funky cheeses, no more teas brewed by widows who smell like old graves and secrets. Your head is heavy, your stomach is unsettled, and your soul feels like a blanket that's been wrung out and hung to dry one too many times. You tell yourself you will walk through this day clean, unbent, unclouded. You will see the world as it is, not as it wants to dance in front of your eyes. At first it feels refreshing, almost noble. You step outside into the chill of morning and inhale air that is only air. No incense, no smoke from burning herbs, no fermented vapor of root vegetables. Just cold breath that makes your chest ache. The dirt path before you is simply dirt, brown and uneven, with stones poking out like teeth. You stare at it for a long while, waiting for it to hum, or whisper, or at least shimmer faintly. It does not. It is only dirt. You nod grimly, as though this is a challenge you are prepared to meet. The sky, too, is disappointing. It's blue, flat, stretched wide with no rippling edges, no saints winking, no constellations blinking in secret code. Clouds drift lazily, not forming into shapes of cows or beat prophets or dancing shoes. You squint until your eyes water, but still, just clouds. You mutter curses under your breath, mourning the loss of a sky that once revealed universes. Now it is just an empty canvas. The animals do not help. The pig that once, in your memory, debated theology with you, now only snorts and roots around in the mud. The chicken, who once led you to a singing tree, only pecks at the ground, unconcerned with your spiritual stagnation. The cow chews cud, placid and blank, her eyes no longer filled with the wisdom of galaxies, but only the dull patience of an animal waiting to be milked. You lean against the fence, staring at her, begging silently for revelation. She blinks, she swats a fly. You feel betrayed. You wander the fields, your steps heavy, your thoughts circling like vultures. The sober world is plain, stripped, almost cruel. You notice the cracks in the cottages, the smell of the latrines, the way people's faces sag with weariness. You notice hunger in your belly, sharp and honest, unsoftened by strange visions. You notice how silence presses in without the hum of grass or the laughter of saints. Everything is sharp, too sharp, cutting into you with the edges of reality. For a moment you consider running back, begging the herbalist's apprentice for another pipe, asking your aunt for another cup of bliss root infusion, even licking a suspicious toad if it comes to it. Anything to paint over the bluntness of this life. But you stop. You breathe. You look again. The dirt, though just dirt, is solid beneath your feet. It does not wobble or threaten to swallow you whole. It holds you, steady, patient. The sky, though boring, is vast, endless, calming in its simplicity. The animals, though silent, are warm bodies, breathing and alive, sharing the same ground as you. You begin to see the value in the ordinary. You crouch in the garden, digging through the soil with your hands, and there at Island, a worm, pink and glistening, wriggling blindly. It is nothing special, nothing mystical, just a worm doing worm things, and yet you smile. You lift it gently, hold it in your palm, and decide to name it Jeremiah. He is small, unremarkable, but he is real. You whisper to him, thank him for existing, and tuck him back into the earth. The day stretches on, uneventful. You fetch water. You mend a tear in your tunic. You share bread with a neighbor who doesn't laugh or glow or reveal hidden truths, but who does thank you sincerely. The world doesn't shimmer or sing, but it doesn't collapse either. It stands, plain and sturdy, and so do you. By nightfall, you sit outside, watching the sky darken. The stars appear, sharp pinpricks of light, silent and cold. They do not blink in code, they do not whisper, but they are beautiful all the same, steady in their places, burning quietly in the distance. You realize you don't need to understand them to feel awe. You wrap yourself in your blanket, your head clearer than it's been in months. It is uncomfortable, but it is also grounding. The world is not magical tonight, but it is yours. And when Jeremiah wriggles out of the soil near your foot, you nod at him like an old friend. You come to this realization slowly, the way dawn creeps in through cracks in a shutter. At first you think it's only you, stumbling through days of blurred edges and crooked visions, the taste of mushrooms still clinging to your teeth, the echo of cow breath galaxies rattling in your chest. You think sobriety is rare, precious, something to grasp at. But then you look around, really look, and it strikes you like a cart axle snapping mid-journey. Everyone is high, in their own way, all the time. The gossip ladies on the bench, for example. They lean together, heads bent, voices sharp as needles, and you see it now, not just chatter, but intoxication. They're high on judgment, glassy-eyed with the rush of passing rumors from mouth to mouth, each scrap of scandal a stronger hit than the last. You hear them cackle about a neighbor's chickens roosting improperly, and it is no different than monks who inhale incense until saints wink at them. Their drug is superiority, and they are blissfully wasted. The priest? He pretends otherwise, of course, but you've watched him pacing, watched the sweat bead at his temples when the candles burn too low, when the choir sings off-key, when the bread runs out too soon at communion. His drug is panic, clutched tight in white-knuckled fists. Every sermon is an anxious trip, every prayer a desperate chant to keep the world from unraveling. He is high on fear, staggering from one trembling service to the next, convinced catastrophe lurks in every shadow. You see the glaze in his eyes, the way his voice climbs too high as he warns about sin. It's not God speaking. It's the panic, giggling in his ear. And the blacksmith? Oh, the blacksmith is the easiest to spot. His workshop reeks of mead before you even cross the threshold. He swears it's just for the taste, just to wet the throat while hammering iron. But you've seen the way his cheeks flush, the way his laugh booms too loud as sparks fly. The fumes hang in the rafters like ghosts, and he breathes them in as though each lungful is holy. He pounds out horseshoes and nails with the rhythm of a man riding a buzz, metal ringing not only from his hammer but from the song rattling in his chest. Even the chickens are not immune. You used to think them simple, pecking, scratching, laying, clucking, but you've seen the way they strut after stealing scraps, the way their beady eyes gleam when they chase children from the yard. They are high on power, ruling the barnyard with feathers fluffed, wings spread like banners. One hen in particular glares at you with a look that says she has tasted the heights of dominion, and she will not come down willingly. Their drug is control, and they are hopelessly addicted. And you? You are somewhere in between mushrooms and meaning, stumbling through visions of saints that no longer wink but still hover in the corners of your sight. You are not sober. Not really. You are high on the memory of it all. High on the way the earth once whispered. High on the way the stars once blinked. High on the possibility that every shadow still hides a secret. You pretend you can walk steady, that you can face the dirt for what it is. But the truth is, you crave the slant, the shimmer, the laughter that erupts from nowhere. Your drug is wonder, and you are never fully clean of it. The world sways. The bread burns. You catch yourself staring at the crust as smoke fills the cottage, the fire licking higher while you nod solemnly, convinced the bread is telling you something. By the time you pull it out, blackened and ruined, you are laughing too hard to care. You eat it anyway, each bitter bite another reminder that life is always on the edge of absurd. And that is the heart of it, isn't it? No one is sober, not truly. The gossipers with their sharp tongues, the priest with his fluttering hands, the blacksmith with his red nose, the chickens with their delusions of grandeur. You with your half-remembered visions. Everyone is stumbling, glazed, carried by something stronger than themselves. Everyone is high on fear, or joy, or power, or despair, or the sheer ridiculousness of survival. It should be frightening. It should make you feel lost. But instead, it comforts you. Because if everyone is tripping, then no one is alone. If the world is unhinged, then so are you, and so is everyone else. And maybe that is what binds you together. The absurdity, the chaos, the glorious human mess of it. So you lean back, chewing burnt bread, listening to the gossip ladies cackle, the priest mutter, the blacksmith sing off key, the chickens plot their dominion, and you smile, because life is happening, and it is ridiculous, and it is holy in its own crooked way. And you think, perhaps, this is the highest you've ever been.